and welcome to Faith in Politics, where we aim to discuss politics through the lens of faith, both here in Hawaii and around the world. I'm Brennan Scarborough, your host. In this program, Daniel Molina and Daniel Rich of Fellowship of Christian Athletes discuss the Supreme Court's decision that allows high school coaches to pray with their team. And did the lockdown have an effect on high school athletes? Plus, an event coming up designed to inspire young athletes and their families. We also have Mac McKethan, who discusses the closing of Oahu's coal-fired power plant. What will it cost the average household? And is this supposed fight against climate change the right move? But first, we start this episode with part one of a discussion with our producer Pete Klaproth and an economic advisor Kelly Dunagan on the economy, the recession, and inflation. How will this affect us living in Hawaii? Let's join in on their conversation.
So Kelly, you need to explain to me in layman's terms, what is a recession and how does that affect me?
A recession technically, by definition, is 2 quarters where the U.S. GDP contracts. So it doesn't mean it goes completely negative, it just means it shrinks just a little bit, typically. So after 2 quarters of contraction of GDP, that technically meets the definition of a recession.
And just to be clear, GDP means?
Gross domestic product.
Which means what?
All the goods and services that are produced in the United States are shrinking. Right now, they're just shrinking slightly. So that's why most people really aren't feeling this recession at this point. And this recession was really created coming out of COVID. It was not really a natural recession. We're just in an economic transition out of COVID, and that's what's pushing us this way.
Most of us here know, especially here in Hawaii, gas prices are killing us, right?
Yeah.
Is that part of the recession? Is that?
Sort of. It is an indicator of a possible recession down the road, that'll be a little bit more. We'll feel it a little bit more. Right now, this one's going to be pretty light. We call this one a very shallow recession. So meaning that honestly, when they readjust the numbers from the first 2 quarters of this year, one of the quarters may actually adjust up. So which means technically this recession that we're technically in is so shallow, the adjustment could pull us out,
right.
When they recalculate the numbers. So what the economy is doing right now, in COVID, as we all know, we were all consuming. We really cut our services out. We weren't going to restaurants, we weren't traveling, a lot of us weren't getting hair done, obviously, nails. So that side of our economy really slowed, and we really moved to the consumable side of our economy. Everybody's getting their Walmart orders, their Amazon orders. So right now we're in the transition of consumers kind of moving out of the consumable side of the economy and moving more into the service side. And that's what's causing this lag that we're seeing as we move from all those Walmart boxes being delivered all the time to us actually being out, going out and going to the restaurants and bars, right. And whatever.
You don't have to wear a mask anymore.
You don't, exactly. Yeah. So it's just a transition that we're in right now. And we're seeing industrial production. We are seeing that slow down a little bit, and that's what's adding to this recessionary number right. that we're seeing.
Recession, inflation, are they like cousins or something?
Cousins, yes. They'll become very, very close siblings at the end of this experiment that we're in right now as the Fed tries to rein in inflation. But typically when you're in an inflationary period, it typically does end in a recession.
Explain inflation.
I'll explain the inflationary period we're in right now.
Okay.
But I'll go back to 2007, 8, and 9 as some context.
I remember that year.
Okay, yes. That was a rough recession. And that was what was called a credit recession. So I just want people to know we're really not headed into a credit recession. Those are the worst ones. We've had 5 of those in U.S. history, and we really don't expect another one for decades. Okay. So we're really not. We're not going to be worrying about that type of recession right now. What happened in 2007, 8, and 9 is what the Fed did is it increased our M1 money supply. In the U.S., we have 2 types of money supply, our M1 and M2, okay? To keep it very simple, M1 is the money that's kept with the financial institutions, our big banks, all of those. That's really not money that you and I can get out of an ATM. Okay, right. So during that recession, the Fed really beefed up our banking system because we were really afraid it was going to collapse. And the way they did that was on the M1 money supply. And that's why coming out of 2007, 8, and 9, we didn't really have much inflation because they were adding all the money really to the institutional side and never really got to the consumer side. Now, this COVID period that we've been in over the last couple of years, what the government did through the Fed and the Treasury is they went ahead and increased the M2 money supply. Okay, the M2 money supply is the money that you and I can get out of an ATM machine, okay, or we have in our CDs or our savings accounts or whatever we may have in the banking system. As individuals, that's all part of the M2 money supply. So when they started doing the stimulus, to help businesses, to help individuals, all of that was pumping money out into the consumer base, which was the M2 money supply. And they increased the money supply by about 42%
Whoa.
Exactly.
Is that meaning they're printing money? Is that what that
Yes,
means?
exactly.
And that's how we get inflation.
Yes. So now we have way too many dollars in circulation with the consumers for way too few goods. And that is what causes inflation.
And who decides that? Is that a government thing, or is that a...
No, we more or less feel it as consumers. So it really is a monetary phenomenon, meaning it's really driven by the printing of money. And you look at other countries around the world that have had rampant inflation, look at Africa and South America, Venezuela, that was all really caused by massive money printing to try to stimulate their economy, but they just printed way too much.
Right, but the government decides to print.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Typically through the Fed and the Treasury. So It's not a natural phenomenon. It is completely government driven. So you and I cannot print money. It's only the government that can.
I mean, I think I know a guy down the street.
Yeah, no, exactly, no doubt.
So the current administration, they seem to be redefining recession. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be a lot of, oh, no, we're not in a recession. Everything's good. Do you see that? Is it just me? Is it the media? Or are we seeing that with the administration?
There's a lot of redefining that's happening in this administration. So, and it just is the period that we're in right now. Anybody that's watching the news knows that this administration's having a very, very tough time. So they're trying to bring positivity to anything that they can, even if it means tweaking the definition of things. So, and especially on the economic side, because that's where you and I and everyone else feels it, at home. It's so they are trying to redefine it, but in technical terms, we are in a recession, but it is very, very mild currently. We really don't expect the big recession. That really, don't be scared of it. Honestly, don't. But we really don't expect the end part of this inflation that should end in a recession until about 2023, maybe 2024. Okay.
Would prices ever go back down to where they were?
They will eventually. They will settle. A lot of prices will stay elevated, as we work through this period. And this period's going to take years. The Federal Reserve is telling us that their goal is to have inflation down to about 5.5% next year.
And right now
we're just under 9%.
Wow, that's huge.
It is, and I'll give a little caveat to that. When Jimmy Carter was president, we had that inflationary period that then Reagan became president. During that period, we were using a CPI calculation, a Consumer Price Index calculation, for how much everything was costing. Back at that time, that included food and energy. Coming out of the Carter administration into Reagan, we pulled the food and the energy out of the calculation. So right now, the inflationary numbers that we're using, even though we're saying we're at 40 years highs, we're not using the same comparison as we were using under Carter, because we changed the contents that created the index. So if you add back in energy and food, and this is why we're feeling it so rough right now in our families, is when you pull the food and the energy back in, we're at almost 80-year highs for inflation. We have not seen inflation like this since coming out of World War II.
Oh my goodness! You're telling me that this recession is not a bad one. However, but you're talking about inflation. Mm-hmm. This is an 80-year high.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So recession not so bad. However, inflation, because of the printing of money and the federal and the Treasury doing what they're doing, is very high.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct, yes. So we really want to put them in two separate categories right now. To fight inflation, what the Fed is doing is raising interest rates, and that really is the only tool that's being utilized by our government currently. There are other tools that should be being utilized that are not currently. So it's with the Fed, with it really lying all on the Fed to deal with the situation. If the rest of the government doesn't come in to help, it's really going to make this period last for many years, honestly. So we're not really seeing, in my opinion, I'm really not seeing a really good break in inflation for at least 4 years, and that's if everything lines up perfectly, to fight it.
Wow. So the president just signed the Inflation Reduction Act. That sounds scary to me, and I'm thinking, what is that going to cost us? What is that? What is it? And will it cost us something?
One thing when it comes to our government, when you read the title of a bill, that tells you exactly what it's not going to do. So that is just
Military
a fact.
intelligence kind of
Exactly,
thing?
yes.
Okay.
So this is definitely not going to help inflation at all.
Yeah, I had a quick look at it, and
Yeah.
there's not much
No,
about the economy there.
no,
There's all these
exactly.
other things that they're throwing money at.
Exactly, and that's really all it is. It has really nothing to do with inflation. And when you really do look at the underlying numbers, it actually long term is going to be about a 0.25% drag on our GDP. So meaning, once again, we were talking about the recession, how our GDP is contracting. This is not going to help. It's going to create about a 0.25% drag on our economy going forward.
So in my layman's terms, it's basically we're going to spend more money to help us, even though we're really low in money.
Yeah,
We're going to make more money.
Yeah, it was to put through the administration's, Build Back Better plan, but in a very pared down form that also incorporated New Green Deal things in it, such as solar and wind.
So really, it's a name change. So
That's all
they've
it
kind of mellowed out.
Exactly,
So it was Green New
yes.
Deal, pretty radical. Buy Back Better, a little less radical.
Right.
And now we've got this.
This Inflation Reduction Act, which really has nothing to do with inflation whatsoever.
Do you think people out there in America are actually buying it? I mean, do you think that people are seeing right through it?
I'm praying that people are seeing right through it, and I really think people are seeing right through it. Because if you just read a few lines of the paper regarding it, or something online, you can see immediately it has nothing to do with inflation. It has to do with healthcare. It has to do with green energy. It has to do with raising taxes, on big business and small business. It has to do with beefing up the IRS. All of those things really are not inflationary.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, the IRS, this is very interesting and pretty scary, actually, as far as I'm concerned. Is it 87,000 new agents, and they're all being trained with weapon usage?
There are going to be several that will be trained with weapons usage. The IRS always has had agents that have had weapons. They have been behind on filling some spots from the past. They have about 300 positions open for weapons carrying agents. But yeah, it looks like they're going to try to add a lot more weapons carrying agents. And in our opinion, this part of the bill is really going after small business. That really is what it's doing. Businesses that have revenue, plus or minus 50,000 from 200,000. So really in that low end small business, that's where they're going to really beef up the agents' audits. We expect the audits to increase about threefold in that band. So that really is the focus.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's my 2020 tax return. I'm actually getting a refund.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
I have not received. It's not much. It's $500. In case anybody wants to know, it's not much, but I could use that right now.
No,
but,
yeah, exactly.
But I haven't gotten it yet, and I'm trying to work out why. And obviously they are behind.
They are extremely behind. They still have over 24 million returns to process from last year.
Wow.
So they are extremely behind. Their computer system is very old. It's outdated. All things I'm not complaining about. I don't mind their computer systems being outdated and them being understaffed. But this bill is to try to also bring their computers and stuff up to date so these backlogs don't happen.
So we've got the rich, the middle class, and the poor. Who gains to lose the most in this?
The middle class. This bill really is targeted to the middle class. The wealthy are going to be fine. They're insulated for most of it. They were proposing raising the top end tax bracket to 39-40% again. That did not go through. So this really, and on the lower end, they really aren't changing anything either. So this really is a target at the middle class, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah. And what does that mean for our country? If the middle class, how big is it? Someone told me that the middle class, middle-sized businesses, small businesses, really drives the economy in America.
They do drive the economy. Yeah, they are well over 60-70% of our economy is driven by small business. And you think about that, in our families with our friends, how many of them do you know that have small side businesses or small businesses such as a florist shop or a nail salon or a small manufacturing company? Whatever. We all know people that have small businesses. It is the biggest part of our economy.
Special thanks to Kelly and Pete. Next week, we'll continue with part 2 of their discussion. You're watching Faith in Politics. We'll be right back.
People ask me, how did I end up working at KALO TV? Well, as I was about to graduate from high school, I got involved with a video project at my church. The finished video was shown to KALO TV, and I was offered an internship for the summer. Of course I said yes. Next thing you know, I was offered a position. Being a small team, I got involved in all aspects of production, from camera work to editing to broadcasting. And what I love most of all is KALO TV's focus on spreading the gospel. In fact, we are the only local Christian TV station in Hawaii. We are always moving forward, making efforts to improve ourselves, and always focused on Christ. Our vision is bigger than any one person. That is why I want to ask you to consider being a part of the team by supporting us, and together we can be an influence on our culture with the message of Christ. Imagine that, working together, broadcasting aloha across Hawaii. Thank you for your financial support that empowers KALO TV.
Are you a coach, athlete, or do you know someone who is? Right behind me on this field, we have an event, fun games, food trucks for the family, the Fields of Faith, October 2nd from 4 to 8. And best of all, Brian Clay, Olympic gold medalist, will be here to share a message with you. We want all our coaches and athletes to be there. See you then. Let's get in the game. How's that?
Hey, did you know that KALO TV has an app? Well, we do. Have you downloaded it yet? It's filled with awesome content, including exclusive uncut material, and it's easy to download. Even your mom can do it. Simply go to the App Store, search KALO TV, hit the download button, and voila! You now have access to inspirational materials that you can watch anywhere. Download the KALO TV app today.
Welcome back to Faith in Politics. Oahu's coal-fired power plant is now closed in an effort to stop the supposed effect of climate change. Is this the right move, and what will it cost the average home here in Hawaii? Here's Mac.
Well, I cannot say that HECO is on a power trip, but I can say that we soon will be tripping about our power bills as we combat climate change. Now, we must understand that the closing of the coal plant was not a decision made in a vacuum, or a decision that did not have data to support the fact that coal is one of the least efficient fossil fuels while emitting the largest amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Again, this is true. And the plan to shut down the coal power plant, which produced the largest single source of electricity on Oahu, seemed to be a well thought out plan, but it was not. This plan is being executed despite the installation of carbon reducing filters and $2 million of additional resources produced by the plant. Hawaii would pursue this ambitious plan without having a firm strategy to follow California in obtaining 100% renewable dependency by the year 2045, which is about 23 years from now. So here we are. And recently, the CEO of HECO put out a statement that spoke about the soon rises that will be seen on our electric bills. And she states that for most customers, it will be about a $15 increase. Now, prior to the CEO's statement, most of us, if not all, have already seen an increase in utility prices over the last few months, even with solar being installed as well as battery backups, as we're blessed to have. And those increases were more than $15 for most. So I'm not sure how they're calculating this $15 increase based on an average of 500 kilowatts per hour month usage, but it seems highly optimistic at best. The truth is, going green will cost, and most of us know this. But going green to meet deadlines, false goals, and/or putting laws in place to attain 100% renewable dependency without affordable technology to do so is more than reckless. And that cost would be significant in many ways that are not being discussed. And those topics are barely broached. And when they are, vague statements are made, or in the most cases, they're just flat out lies being told to appease people and/or political interest groups in order to advance political agendas. Because on paper, it looks so good. It even sounds so great when it's promoted. But with little research, just a little, we can clearly see that achieving 100% reliance on renewable energy by 2045 as it stands is not based on reality. And this information comes directly from the experts. As most of you know, in 2015, a General Electric study was conducted in Hawaii that provided promising news to Hawaii regarding the goal of lowering its carbon footprint and transitioning away from fossil fuels. This report would largely influence the passing of HB 623 that requires Hawaii to attain this 100% renewable standard by 2045. This report you can find on the HECO website. They simulated 18 scenarios in Hawaii that could achieve 40% RPS by 2030. And since HECO has already achieved 38% RPS last year, 100% should be a walk in the park, right? Wrong. Because nowhere in this study does it ever state or conclude that 100% RPS is achievable. And this study was primarily geared towards wind and solar energy sources, while adopting maybe natural gas as an alternate primary fuel source. That being said, the study also states, quoting, "The relatively low values of wind and solar resources indicate that other methods will be required to maintain grid reliability," end quote. So you're probably saying that we have biofuel, hydroelectric, or perhaps geothermal resources as well, and that may be true. But out of the 15 renewable projects approved by regulators, only one is geothermal, and it has no estimated completion date. Every other project deal with solar and battery storage systems. And if you think that battery storage will make up the difference, think again. In addition, a forecasted environmental footprint, additional renewable energy sources are not even visualized within this study, nor is the max capacity of these renewable systems based on required land usage and infrastructure needs ever shown. In other words, how much green do we have to kill to go green? Not to mention the disposal process for all associated renewable solar and battery materials, which nearly all that are in service today will be expired by 2045. What cost to the environment will all of this truly have? What about the carbon footprint that's needed to mine for all of these minerals? What about the cost of the countless lives, mostly in Africa, that are cut short due to poor conditions associated with mining for these materials? We care so much about the planet, but not about all of the people. So where's Black Lives Matter when you need them? We could be good stewards of our planet with a more balanced approach, one that should be environmentally considerate, economically sound, technologically achievable, without hypocritical cries for humanity. So what policies are you voting for? Addressing social and cultural issues, I'm Mac, for Faith in Politics.
Thanks, Mac, on that report. Let us know what your next power bill looks like and if you see any changes. Next up, Daniel Molina and Daniel Rich of FCA discuss the Supreme Court's decision that allows high school coaches to pray with their team. And did the closing down of schools have an effect on high school athletes? Let's join their conversation.
So a Supreme Court ruling just came out on Coach Kennedy out in Washington. Tell me a little bit about what happened there.
Well, this guy had a wonderful routine. After game, go to the 50-yard line, kneel and pray, a really appropriate prayer. And he lost his job because athletes came and joined him. His influence led that on. So it was an important thing for us, and it's really important because coaches have a chance to show they don't have to be completely silenced as a state employee. They have their First Amendment right in an appropriate way. And we're so grateful for his courage, kind of pulling a Shadrach, Meshach, or Abednego moment. It's really powerful and gives us a lot of freedom as we train and equip coaches.
How important is that for you to know where he's at, the decision he made to go out there and pray? You as an athlete, how important was to pray after or before the game?
In the pressure of sport, it challenges us, like a death in a family, a major accident, or a major win. It's where we keep our pride in check. It's where we stay connected with the Father. It's where we allow the peace of Christ to rule and reign in our heart as we compete. So to have a coach go through the same stuff with all the parent pressure, it's really important that our coaches are allowed to have these type of routines to stay connected with our Father and praise and celebrate Him.
So another thing that was pretty crazy is during COVID, no one was playing sports right here in Hawaii. So how did that impact the students and the athletes as we're coming back into playing sports again?
Yeah, we're super grateful now, but I noticed disconnect. I've noticed that the suicide rate, mental issues have only increased. So the chance to be back in person, a chance for athletes to encourage each other and to use their First Amendment to talk about Jesus's impact on their life, and then to be around wonderful mentors like coaches. Like, when else are athletes putting their phone down? When else are they looking to a kapuna saying, teach me, guide me, than sport? So it is really nice to be back together.
So speaking of coaches and athletes connection, there's an event coming up. What is that event about?
Yeah, so we're calling it Fields of Faith, and what we're doing is going after our biggest issue. We believe there's thousands of Christian coaches and athletes in church every weekend, but spiritually they're not in the game. They're on the sidelines, and who likes being there? Or even worse, maybe in the stands. And we've created an event to kind of call everyone out, come to the Fields of Faith. It's going to be October 2nd at Farrington Football Stadium. So it's for people. It's a family event. If you love Jesus, you love sports, you should be there. And we're going to have competition. We're going to have a giant of the sports world, Brian Clay from here in Hawaii, will be sharing about why he's chosen to follow Jesus and how God's helped him becoming a gold medal Olympian in 2008. We'll turn competition time into a moment of get in the game. What is it going to take to get someone out of the stands onto the field? It is going to take stories and testimonies. So right now as FCA, we're launching out fun stories of a 9th grader inviting her team to church and everyone coming, and now they're bringing their mom, or an athlete at Kapolei who's leading a spiritual feeding before every game, and they all rally the team, and the guys who choose to be there, they read a scripture and get riled up. It's really fun to see the influence that a coach or an athlete can have, but thousands don't know these testimonies that we know. So we're making an event to share those testimonies and to give people a chance to get in the game. So we're really tagging Let's Get in the Game, because this is an invitation to all of us. And here's the play is really an old play. Jesus invited all the disciples to go, and the ones that they were leading, and invites and challenges them all to go. This is our opportunity. This is our moment to say, God's with you. God believes in you. It's time. Let's get in the game.
And for those who are not Christian, is that a really good time to kind of bring new people to come in there?
Yeah, if you want to invite your friends that don't know Jesus yet, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have food trucks. We're going to have inspiring speakers, incredible music from local artists, and there's a little competition. So home run derby, football toss, college athletes, pro athletes there. It's going to be worth someone's time. And then I recognize as we share the gospel, as Brandon Ahu from Metro Church partnering with us, as emceeing and shares the gospel, it's going to be a special moment. So bring your friends, bring your family, and come have a fun competition. Act like it's a Friday night football game. We got everything else taken care of.
This event looks awesome. Let's get the word out to athletes, coaches, and let them know about this much needed event. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith in Politics. We'll continue to bring a voice to the faith community. This program exists because of viewers like you, and from all of us here at Faith in Politics, thank you for your support prayerfully and financially. If you believe the content we're providing is important, please consider partnering with us. For those watching on social platforms such as Rumble or YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Join us next week for part 2 of our discussion with Kelly Dunagan on the economy. I'm Brendan Scarborough, and until next time, aloha.